maps and so forth showing where that pipeline is. All of the involved property owners have been duly notified by Enbridge. This is a courtesy mailing to the village. Just wanted everyone to know.
Roughly, where is it? What in proximity to the village?
Yeah, I believe it's west and north a little bit in relation to the village. So, because it goes through Monee Township, they notify the village. So
West of I-57?
it is, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Item 1 on my agenda has to do, it's a board action request requesting a TIF payout from TIF number 2 for Will Partners REIT LLC in the amount of $227,042.23. This request has been reviewed by myself and in conversations with Attorney Krajewski is found to be in order, and we would ask the board to authorize direction to Amalgamated Bank to wire transfer that amount to Will Partners REIT LLC.
Entertain a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Pop, Gray. Roll call, please.
Trustee Horne?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Raisik?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
And Trustee Holston?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Item number F2 on my agenda is a TIF 3 payout request from Graylar LLC in the amount of $17,226.18. And again, after review and in conversations with Attorney Krajewski, this request is in accordance with the redevelopment agreement, and we're asking the board authorize the payout of that amount in check form directly to Graylar LLP. And again, that amount $17,226.18.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Discussion?
Gonzalez and Horne, discussion.
Mr. Wallace, as pertaining to the letter that was attached, I was a little confused as to the comment down below the calculation related to the developer's note. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Each of the redevelopment agreements, or many of the redevelopment agreements, carry with them a developer's note that has interest accruing. It has been the practice, and in the sequential order of the redevelopment agreement, the village pays on principal first before any interest is paid at all. This is not unusual. They have made these requests in past years, but they've been told previously that we pay on the principal first. And I believe that Attorney Krajewski could expound upon that.
Are we accruing this interest then, or we're going to be liable for this at some time in the future?
That is correct. That's part of the note. And it boils down to the expiration, what comes first, the ability to pay the note in accordance with the terms of the redevelopment agreement, or expiration of the TIF district. There's no liability beyond the term of the life of the TIF. So the village itself would not incur any liability on that. Would that be correct, Attorney Krajewski? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Pop?
Yes.
Raisik?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Holston?
Yes.
Horne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, item 3 on my agenda has to do with the residential inspection fees. The conversation has been brought to my attention through the building department manager, Jim Smith, that we've been noticed by our inspectors that of their intent to raise the fees to $35 at this point, and one begins as of April 1, and another would appear to begin March 1st on 2014. These are governed by what we can charge the public for inspection fees are governed by ordinance, and it's suggesting here that based on the information that we have received from our inspectors, and that Jim Smith has done a cursory review of surrounding communities of inspection fees, which range from 35 to 50, 30 to 50, and a couple of them are firm on $50 per inspection, that the board consider directing the attorney to draft an amendment to ordinance 1539, raising the residential inspection rate. We're happy to supply a suggested rate, but we thought the board may wish to discuss that.
Discussion in, any of the trustees?
Yeah, I'm wondering, who makes the decision that they would like more money for inspection? How does this determine? I understand we may be below some others, but I'm just wondering.
Right, well, who determines that is the village board. However, we contract all of our inspections to contracted employees, and they set their rates based upon, they belong to associations. They work for other municipalities that are in the area and do inspections for them as well. And our inspectors, if you take a look at the ordinance, I believe the date was July of 2010, and I don't know that, in fact, that those fees were raised at that point. That's just the most recent date of the ordinance. And they take a collective idea on what their services are worth in the open market, that's all. It certainly remains with the village whether or not they want to pay that fee or not pay that fee.
Just one other little short question on that, has anybody called perhaps other inspection companies that are still charging 30 or 25 per inspection?
We haven't called inspection companies per se, but according to Jim Smith, and Jim is here if there's any direct questions for him, but the ranges of inspections, like in Richmond Park, I believe they do those in-house. The ranges there depend on the type of inspection, so they must spell that out by ordinance a little more clear. I believe Beecher and Piatone hire a private company to do all of their inspections, and again, their range runs from 30 to 50 dollars regarding that.
One of the members of the zoning committee is an inspector as well, outside the village. He lives in the village, but we might want to check with him. I think $30 is unreasonably low, probably for the job nowadays, but it might be worth it. There's no way we can do this in-house at all. We don't have anybody qualified at this point.
At this point, we do not. And we're certainly happy to check with anyone. We try and, I know that Jim tries to maintain a depth on the inspections so that we're not hung up by one inspector, you know, they go on vacation or what have you.
There's one every time a house is sold or remodeled, or is this pertain to when there's something done to a house or when a house is just sold?
Yes, construction inspections during that point.
There's Jim.
Mostly building.
Yeah, okay. So approximately how many years do we have?
I wouldn't have that information off the top.
How many per year, Jim? Do you have any idea? I know you're still kind of new.
How many inspections per year?
Yeah, roughly.
Oh, gosh, 300 maybe, 400?
So this
Depending on
includes
depending on the workload of the building permits.
Well, you're looking at $9,000, $9,000 to $10,000.
Now, when you say 300 per year, are you talking about 300 properties that have different types of inspections, or
300 inspections.
Okay.
So if somebody's putting up a fence or putting up a deck or,
Well, when we did our sidewalk, or I mean our driveway, they came out and did inspection.
Right.
When we did the roof, I believe they did that. That was
And so that we have a clear understanding, those are pass-through costs.
right.
We charge the, you know, the residents, and that in turn pays for the contracted employee.
and I see no reason that it should be authorized.
Well, there's no buffer to go along with the event where there's something being challenged, or if there's something that requires administrative oversight on the issues or anything like that. So as a result of that, we don't want to make a profit on it, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't actually cover our margins in a safe way. Not to, we don't wanna be excessive either. So if what you're suggesting, if it's costing us, it costs us $35, and we have a $15 margin on that, is that what you're suggesting?
I did not make a suggestion, but the two inspectors that we've been noticed from would like to increase their rates, or are increasing their rates from 30 to 35. I certainly would agree with you and suggest that there is an additional amount that is included in that for oversight and
Administrative costs.
administrative costs and so forth.
And I think 50 is pretty reasonable.
And that's per type of inspection, so electrical, plumbing would each be separate, correct?
Yes. Right now, it's a flat rate with just $30 per inspection throughout the spectrum of inspections, whether it be plumbing or electrical, or just a building. But in the future, I see that fluctuating a little bit, where the more specialized plumbing and electrical inspections could be a little bit more.
And those are more specific to those trades, but like trustee Gonzalez brought up about a fence, who does the inspections for that?
Our building inspector does.
Okay. Code enforcement, et cetera.
Well, code enforcement helps in some respects, but she's not qualified to do building inspections. So fences are a little specialized with means of egress and such, so.
Okay. Any more dialogue? How do you guys feel about going to 50, if that's what the trend seems to be going towards? The ones that are still at 30 or 35, have they been there for a while? Do we know that?
The ones that we have here, they range from 30 to 50, and that is dependent on the type of inspection. As Jimmy alluded to, there may be some more specialized ones that they charge 50, other ones they charge, it's a simple depth of a post hole, they may only charge $30 for. And we try and accommodate those in-house actually, so there's...
Well, and just today, I overheard our building department manager, acknowledge to a recent purchaser of the property that there's a list of things that were included that they were gonna be charged for an inspection for, and he endeared the village to the person by identifying the fact that there was one aspect of that that didn't really warrant a full-out inspection, so he discounted that off of the amount necessary. He is taking that latitude to deal with those things so that somebody's not being bombarded with things unnecessarily. So only those things that are relevant they're gonna be charged for. So I'd entertain a motion for $50 across the board.
I was going to suggest that maybe the administration come back. I mean, we're not here to set prices on a trustee level. I'd rather see them come back with a recommendation to us. They did some initial survey. I would think they ought to do a little more work and come back next month with a suggestion to us.
And I would tend to agree, and like you said, Richmond Park does it in tiers, so maybe if we do have a flat fee for post hole inspections, one for plumbing, one for the different types, or if the more, have it in tiers.
Okay.
And amend the
So
ordinance that way.
so it sounds like a motion to table, or,
I do have some information that, from the inspectors, that their average is $40 per inspection in the inspection field. Jim did question them, and that's the information that we got from them.
Well,
So, if that helps too.
I certainly think 50 is probably fair, but I'd like to see a little more research and report come back. I make a motion we table it for a month.
all right, and just to be clear, you're asking that the administration come back with a schedule of
With a
rates
proposal, yeah.
based on the type of services.
Right.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, so we got Holston, Gonzalez. Any further discussion?
I just like to ask one more question. If an inspector goes to inspect a specific, let's call it an item, whether it's electrical or plumbing, if they make another trip back, is there another charge for that? Do you know?
Generally, yes, there is.
There would be.
Yes. Because we try and put the call for inspection in control of the contractor. They should not call unless they're ready. And so they call, and that means that they're ready. We go out, and if it fails code, that means they've made a mistake and it just fails code. And we have to come back to
Trustee
reinspect.
Popper, you're referring to a pre and post inspection?
No, not so much. It would be like making an inspection on the rough-in of plumbing before a wall's covered. Then you might come back to look at the finished product. I don't know. that would be 2 trips. Usually there is an inspection for anything inside walls before the wall is covered, electrical, plumbing, heating, whatever may be in there. Could possibly demand 2 trips. I really don't know. I don't know how it works. Maybe we in-house do the inspection in the wall. I don't know. Those are
So,
questions that possibly trustee Holston's alluding to,
so just to be clear, since it's already being tabled till next meeting, Jim, if you would be so kind as to also include our policies as you would like to see them regarding repeat visits or no-shows and whatever the situation may be, included in the schedule of pricing, also identify what you would like to see the policy set forth, and then the board can vote on that as well. We need a roll call unless there's any other discussion. Roll call, please.
Excuse me, trustee Racick,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Holston. Yes. Horne. Yes. Pop.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Item F4 on my agenda is the online bill pay vendors. We have had many, researched several different vendors, boiled down to these 2 vendors here. Just recently, earlier this week, I did receive an email asking some specifics. And just for information, the PSN proposal, I have an email that claims that they can provide wireless off-site transaction, and that they do not have an app, but expecting one in the 4th quarter of 2014. Additionally, I just
If I could,
yes, sir.
the relevance of that would be, and when you're talking about this, you're not just talking about for water, but you're also talking about across the board for credit card processing within the village.
That is correct.
And the benefit would be when we're doing activities or different functions, then we would have the ability with a mobile, wireless, whatever the other options might be, that would allow us with Parks and Rec or an event of some sort where people could actually transact without having to come to the village hall to do so. Just, that would be the benefit of that, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir. What you have before you on the first page of the board access or board action request is basically it's a different approach to doing business. So between the 2 companies, LexisNexis charges no setup, monthly or annual fees, and there's flat fees that are charged to utility customers based on the attached proposal. I put in the proposal, and then the very last sheet is a comparison as to who would be cheaper and who wouldn't under certain billings. And additionally, PSN charges a one-time fee of $99, an annual fee of $89, and then a monthly fee of $12.95. The charges to customers are a percentage to the customer based on their attached proposal as well. And I believe that the key for them is that anything under $100 is the percentage rate of 2.75% plus a 30-cent transaction fee. As everyone knows, or may know, our minimum bill on the utility side is $68.47 for a bi-monthly bill. So that falls under the transaction fee rate under the PSN if you switch to that last page there. And I guess the real question is not only to select the vendor here, but also to understand the types of fees that are suggested to be passed on to the consumer as a convenience fee. Both of these quotes are set up that way, that fee is not absorbed by the municipality, it is passed on to the consumer. So a good guidance is certainly that last page where you can see that at certain levels, it goes from one being less to the other company being less, and it just kind of vacillates back and forth there.
Question, Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
After receiving this, I spent my weekend, and thank you for getting it out to me this weekend, so I had time to do this research. There's 9 communities that I researched, in the 6 of which are in the area: Beecher, Peatone, Creek, Stager, Richmond Park, Matson. And then I also went on Wilmington, Naperville, and Yorkville's pages. For information purposes, 2 of those communities, Wilmington and Naperville, have no fees to the consumer. The rest do. But I was curious, the majority of these communities use e-pay. Is that an option we looked at, and if we chose not to use that, is there a reason for that?
Yes, sir, we did look at e-pay, and we too researched spoke with other communities, and e-pay is an Illinois-based, Illinois e-pay is, they're the ones that run it.
State of Illinois,
Right. They don't, you have some delay, a significant delay in transfer of monies, and reconciliation has been less than desirable in many instances where e-pay is involved.
Where did you get that information from?
Crete is one, for sure, and it just depends on who's, what they have.
Okay, but I noticed that the majority of the immediate communities around us do use e-pay.
And I believe if you ask when online bill pay really became popular in its conception, Illinois e-pay was virtually the only game in town, the best way to handle that.
Right.
Since that time, some laws have changed that allow, and here's the difference in the proposals, LexisNexis still believes that they need to charge a flat fee for a utility rate. And Payment Services Network says that law was changed and you can charge a percentage based on the utility bill. So back in the day, there were flat fees that were required, and there weren't a lot of agencies set up to handle a flat fee as online bill pay for municipalities because there were certain restrictions on that.
Based upon what you gave us in our packet, it would appear that LexisNexis has a comparative advantage here. How long has that company been around? You know anything about their stability?
They number one, they're certainly nationwide, if not worldwide. I can't recall the conversation, but I know nationwide. They handle several counties, municipalities, throughout the entire nation. They're very, very reputable, as is Payment Services Network.
I believe LexisNexis has a contract for the entire Cook County bond. Like if somebody gets arrested, they get a post bond to get out of jail. I think
Never used Cook County.
I'm just saying, they've got the entire county and a lot of the municipalities in Cook County as a result. Question I have goes to the merchant services. I believe we had somebody inquire recently regarding the gateway mechanism would be available for online issues not pertaining to the utility payments, but activity fees, participation fees and things of that sort.
Right.
Which one of these seems to have a better back end for that?
Both of the companies suggested that it's merely a button that takes the consumer to a secondary site which they control, and they're able to process anything through there, not restricted to utility payments.
Okay. Do you see a distinct difference in one or the other of these two? I know you're helping all of us decipher this, so do you have a personal preference, or are they really both kind of, either one is a good choice?
I can say that we had a meeting recently with Locus, our software, in-house accounting package software people. They do have a working affiliation with Payment Services Network, but I wouldn't let that restrict us. LexisNexis has been around and certainly has made verbal guarantees that they can work with anybody as far as uploading and downloading the proper information. I think that it boils down to, personally, I think we need to weigh the cost to the municipality along with the costs that are going to be passed on to the consumers as a convenience fee. strike that happy medium, and in today's day and age, I believe that we have two big players here, and either one could provide those services.
And they're both cost efficient mutually for the consumer as well as for the municipality. One doesn't stand out overwhelmingly over the other.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that, you know, it'd have to be a personal judgment based on the last payment, you know, that schedule.
And you're talking about 2 cents difference in some cases.
Exactly.
So were you able to play on each of their websites or try to complete a transaction? Did they allow you to do that?
No, we did not. We did not get on.
I would like to throw one thing out here if we could, and that is, based on the information provided, I think either one of these could be, you know, very viable and very timely, you know, for what we're trying to accomplish here. I know we have water bills that are going out one more billing cycle. This won't be operational before that happens, I wouldn't imagine, with any instructions to the people who would be using it. We had a meeting with the web developer just last Saturday, and I know one of the things that was thrown out there that he had indicated was an interest pertaining to the, let's say, Parks and Rec activity, you know, being able to have people do online transactions, and the back end, the merchant account services gateway, the API, advanced programming interface, would be the pivotal thing that might tilt us one way or the other, because we want to make sure that integrates well, not just with Locust, which is important. So my suggestion would be that since either one of these are good options, that we defer to the administration to identify the one that we would want to go with based on the overall impact. We've looked at everything except for the merchant services gateway, and I would simply allow for the administrator, I'd entertain a motion to allow the administrator to.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
We're talking here just about paying utility bills, but a number of the other villages, as I researched them, do use this same service to do a couple other things. One is to get their vehicle stickers, and the second one is to pay court fines for tickets that the police department might issue. Will either one of these services be able to do that?
Yes, they will. We use the utility billing as a basis for our investigation.
I'd make a motion that we allow the administration to move forward and strike a contract with one of these two. I don't think there's a particular, again, I don't feel like we're qualified to decide which one, but I definitely, we're the only village in the area that doesn't have this.
Right.
Everybody has it.
So a motion to allow administration to identify based on all the information,
select one of
additional,
these two.
especially with the web interfacing, which will be important to us.
If you come up with a significant difference, then maybe you can bring it back to us, but I don't, well, yeah, I guess you have to bring it back to us either way.
PSN, it looks like it's leaning towards PSN because of the mobile or the wireless option. So that's an incentive, but, you know, there again, I'd say we trust the administration to make the right decision.
Looking forward to paying my water bills online.
Now, will this also deal with the, just so the general public knows, will this also deal with the need for people that want to do an electronic, an ACH, EFT, whatever the case may be?
Yeah, ACH, we can set that up
Directly with the bank?
directly with the bank now,
Okay,
through our Locust software.
got it.
So yes, we'll be able to handle that. Everything else they'll be able to do, e-checks, you know, credit cards. They even go as far as PSN proposed that, you know, they can send water bill reminders. Now, there's a fee for that, an additional fee that is not included in here, but, you know, it can go to any extent that you're willing to pay for it to go. But for a consumer to get their water bill, log on, enter their account, and pay their bill, be able to pay their bill, either one of these are going to be able to accommodate that. When the vehicle stickers go out, to be able to order your vehicle stickers online, pay that, and then we just send the vehicle stickers out, that is another capability that we will, for both, to handle on, yes.
Now, does Lexus and Nexus, are they gonna be able to, pay your bill over your mobile phone as well?
They do not have a mobile app at this time, yeah.
Okay.
This PSN,
PSN does have it, it says.
they don't have a mobile app, it didn't sound like, they just have a wireless option.
Wireless, yeah.
Yeah, they have wireless, yep, and PSN did say that they will have a wireless, or a mobile app in the fourth quarter of 2014.
Just in time for fall fest.
There are a lot of people that like that.
Yeah.
So, just to be clear, both of them will be able to do, in order, go paperless, receive their water bill, or log in to get their water bill, pay it, vehicle stickers, and if we're signing up for a Parks and Rec, something, all three of them, both of them are capable, all three.
We're going to be able to send the water bill like we normally do. You can log on, go to our website, hit a button, it'll take you a link, it'll take you, you enter your account number, yes, you can pay your water bill. When we make the vehicle stickers, we send out the vehicle sticker, applications or what have you, that we're going to make it so that they can make any payments online that are within reason. Probably not your large construction permits or anything like that, because the fee gets,
Well, the fee gets passed on to them though.
well, it does, but there is a limit on some of these, okay? I think it's a $5,000 limit, and we've had permits that go well beyond that, so. But, any fee that is set that we choose to put on there and allow payment on, they'll be able to make a payment on.
Will this also take the place of our processing machines that we have in the front office?
They'll replace that with their processing machine, yes.
Same thing for the police department as well.
Let's give people the option to go paperless as well.
That's what I asked.
Well, let me clarify if I can.
Go paperless though, but.
This is pertaining to somebody manually doing the transaction via credit card, either online or whatever method they want to use. As recurring is an option for the credit card as well.
That's not, was my question, it was to go paperless altogether, so we wouldn't have to mail out the water bill, we wouldn't have to.
Several villages do that now. On my research, I thought there were 3 villages in the area that actually you can get your bill online. You can receive your bill by email, and you don't have to receive a hard copy.
So true.
So I think that's her question, which has
That'll
nothing,
be an issue.
actually has nothing to do with these 2 people, I'm sure.
That'll be an issue with Locus, which is our database we use in-house.
Yes, I believe PSN in their description can send out the bills, send a notification, email type notification. They can do that. I didn't catch that in the LexisNexis, but for some further investigation, I'll take care of that.
But what I was getting at, and I understand what you're saying there, the idea is if we can eliminate the paper or the postage for the ones that are being done automatically, that's great. The other point though would be that not the credit card, but an ACH would be set up, and that would be something would be set up through Locus and First Midwest Bank, which is a processor for our regular checking. And that would be where you could have an automatically, regardless if the rate changes or whatever else, it automatically comes out. Now, personally, I'd still want to receive a notice via email or on paper, letting me know this is how much they're going to be taken out on this date, just so that, we're not surprised. But there's got to be a mechanism for going paperless, I get it, but I think the priority here is obviously making sure that we give our constituents an opportunity to pay in various forms with simplicity.
So it's nice to be able to go green.
Yep. Instead of blue.
Or
Or
red.
yellow.
Or red.
Okay, so I believe there's a motion on by Holston to defer this to the administration to make the final decision. Was there a second on that?
Heidi?
Gonzalez? And I'll take a roll call on that, please.
Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Holston?
Yes.
Horne?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Raisik?
Yes. What is it?
All right.
Okay,
We'll do that next.
thank you, sir, and Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you.
I would like to refer to the department heads to give their monthly report to the board, if that is okay.
If I could pause for just a second.
Sure.
It just brought to my attention that, again, anyhow, We failed to address the open to the public agenda items. My apologies, deepest regrets. If anybody has anything they want to discuss pertaining to any of the agenda items, please come forward. Thank you, John. I'm sorry, that was department heads?
Department heads, and I would like to make a note that EMA coordinator Ruben Batista is not in attendance tonight as he had a conflict with an EMA meeting.
Well, it was Will County.
It was Will County Mutual Aid, I believe, is
Good.
where he's at.
Thank you.
Sure.
Steve?
I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that there's been a lot of law changes since the first of the year. Some of them are slightly entertaining, like we can't fly drones over your house anymore, not that we ever did, but we have to have a warrant to do that now. The Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Act passed, so if you see somebody smoking marijuana, that doesn't mean you don't call us. It just means it's possible that they're actually legally able to do that, but they should be at their house when they are. Everybody's probably seen the knockout tagout game, so-called, where people are being hit and knocked out. Legislature's seen fit to pass a law prohibiting the recording of that for dissemination later. If it's an aggravated assault, they've made it a Class A misdemeanor. If it's actually an aggravated battery, which would be an elderly citizen or somebody of that nature, it's actually a Class 3 felony. That's one that I think was particularly important because what's made it famous around the country are all these viral videos. So I think the legislature did a good job in acting on that. We also have had a change to obedience to police officers. It used to include just police officers, firefighters, and school crossing guards. It now includes anybody that we assign to set in traffic, which would also include people like EMA. It would include people like DJ staff if we put them out there with a vest to direct traffic. They act under the same color of law to move traffic as we do, and you have to obey them. So that's an enhanced penalty. And for those of you that are wine drinkers, you can now ask your sommelier to recork your wine, put it into a tamper-resistant bag, and you can transport your half of $100 bottle of wine home with you from now on.
Yes.
Hey, I tried to give you a couple of good ones and some funny ones. And
Could you go back, if you could, just go back to
Sure.
the one prior, regarding the,
obedience to police officers?
yes, sir. If you don't mind just touching on Scott's Law to remind people about the relevance of what to do when there's a situation like that.
Well, there's an enhancement with, again, with Scott's Law also as far as penalty fines go, but with Scott's Law, you have to obey the flagger. You can't just slow down, you can't beep at them, you can't wave at them. The obligation is to stop, and until you're moved forward, stay there. So that's one of the reasons why there was a change in the law, because there's times when people are set out by police officers in their traffic safety vest, and they see it's not a police officer, and somebody drives right by it anyway, and there could be people working down the road that are not, that are in public safety. So one of the reasons why they did it. And the last thing I have is that look forward to me making a fool out of myself at the polar plunge in March. We're going to do what we can for Special Olympics this year. We're going to try to make it a special project and welcome anybody to come out to Joliet. I'll give you the dates when they come a little bit closer. And hopefully if the flu doesn't kill me, I hope the rest doesn't. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions of the Chief? Okay. Next.
DJ?
It's been a slow month for public works, so I don't have much to report.
Long year, maybe.
Everybody had a good Christmas and New Year. I want to say that on a side note, before I give my report, we being myself, Ruben, the mayor, some of the village officials partnered with Richmond Park on a Polar Express ride to see if it was something that the village would like to entertain. I, for one, had a great time. My family had a great time. Santa Claus was awesome. He did a great job. He entertained the kids very well. He He was tuckered out, he was tired, he was hot, but he did a great job, so I just want to thank the community for reaching out to another community to try to see if that worked out. We had a great time doing it. Hopefully we can adopt some kind of thing in our village to be able to do that. Now back to the business at hand. Snow removal has been our top priority over the last, probably since Christmas started. My staff, including myself, have nonstop, tirelessly, feverishly removed snow, plowed streets, salted when available. I want to thank the residents who were very tolerant to our efforts, although I know some of them were quite upset as they could not keep up with the plowing of the ends of their driveways. We could not keep up with the plowing on the streets. High winds, low temps made salting not available option, salting unresolved. So I want to again thank the people that waited for us. We were still cleaning up today, started early, staying late, that kind of stuff. We've had teams out there in our equipment removing the big pile points of snow for line of sight, visible areas, intersections, and for emergency vehicles to be able to pass by. We've been unburying fire hydrants along with the fire department has been helping and assisting on that to make sure that critical services can still be provided if need be. I want to remind some of the residents though that there is the ordinance that states they cannot deposit their snow on the streets. I know we've had a lot of problems lately with private contractors and plow trucks back dragging the snow out of their driveways, residents' driveways, and putting them on the streets. Some of the concerns that the residents shared with me was that why do we keep circling the street many times? It was due to sometimes a parked car that we'd have to go back and clean up the spot that the car moved from. It could have been from a neighbor discharging snow onto the street where we're trying to keep it clean and passable. It could have been a drift. It could have been a plow truck. I just want to remind you to please not do that. It makes our days longer and our efforts longer, and it makes everybody have to work a little harder. We've also had some residents with their own personal vehicle plow trucks take it upon themselves to help clean our streets. I would strongly discourage any private citizen, resident, commercial entity to plow our streets for us. That puts the liability on them for any problems that they run into, and we've had this happen. Mailboxes have been hit, yards have been dug up, things of that nature. Please don't do that. Please allow us to do that. We're the professionals out there. It's our responsibility to clean the streets. We will do that. Really, that's really about it. Just a side note with the flagger stuff that Chief was talking about. All my guys are IDOT certified. We've gone through the training. We have our IDOT flagger cards, so you don't have to worry about anybody during traffic that is not certified through IDOT, because we are certified and they keep up on that. Other than that, I think that's about all I really have to say. Thank you. Have a great day.
David, while you're there, I might say I commend you on having all your drivers have a copy of the ordinance that says that people cannot put their personal snow on the street. And they have had residents tell them, I don't care. I don't care about your ordinance. I understand the disgust some people may have. This was an unbelievable amount of snow. A lot of frustration sets in, but the fact that he's got them carrying the ordinance, and here's a copy of it, I commend you for that. Okay? I know you're covering the bases. That's terrific.
I think perhaps we'll have a workshop on how to shovel your driveway so as to minimize aggravation.
And Mayor, kudos to you for cooking for them a couple of times. They didn't even get sick or nothing.
Yeah, well, compared to the alternatives?
No, it was great. The mayor cooked them some food a couple of times.
He did take care of us. He saw the long hours. He actually was able to do a ride-along and witness some of the stuff that we go through. It was a very unique experience for him. I encourage anybody else else that would like to try, there's, the mayor suggested if you would like to go for a short tour, I'll make sure I give you a call at 2 a.m. And you can take a ride along when we're out there doing it. It is a unique experience. You can see some of the stuff that we go up against sometimes. It's hard to describe the stuff that you see. One of them was a guy in shorts and flip-flops on his driveway. So, you know, it's unique. People walking along the edge of the road while you're plowing, you know, whiteout conditions. Another side note I really want to try to touch on, I guess I should have brought it up, is with these heavy snows, I encourage residents to take a break between plowing and shoveling their driveways. There's a lot of related deaths when it comes to that, and when the snow gets heavy and it gets thick like it does, I witness the same residents out there all the time, constantly, you know, trying to keep up with it themselves, and serious health problems can result from that. So take a time out, make sure you pace yourself, especially when it's snowing and it's still coming down. My responsibility is to keep the streets clear for emergency personnel and for other people to be able to do what they can. Let us get our job done. Try to wait as long as you can before you clean the driveway.
To follow up on that, we actually had one of our vendors from the village, was it Sunday, that 57 years old, I believe, was out shoveling his driveway, went back in the house, and that was it. So it's not a minor thing to look at the relevance of doing a little bit at a time and not getting overworked. I mean, even using a snow blower in the sub-zero temperatures like this, you end up breathing in the hot exhaust fumes from the thing. So just pace yourself, take your time. Your health is more important than getting out of your driveway and making it look all pretty. So I would suggest if any of you are interested in doing a ride-along with Public Works, and I'm gonna, at some point I'll talk to the chief about the possibility with the police, and there might be other safety-related criteria that have to go along with all that, but I was amazed. You know, we think of it as somebody's got a driver's license and they can plow and they can clear the streets, like as if you're clearing your own driveway. You can do a driveway right or wrong, it's not that big of a deal. But there was an extreme level of organization that took place, a very concerted effort. DJ has done such a phenomenal job. I can't say enough how impressed I am with him, in be it going and helping out at things like the Polar Express experiment, I guess if you will, or just organizing his troops, encouraging the morale, and very impressive, and it should not be taken casually when you look at the work that was accomplished by our Public Works Department. We have neighboring communities that still have streets that they haven't even plowed yet. And it's all the more justification, if you will, why it's important that we have our own mechanical services available to us, because there were a number of times when we had failures in the equipment. Things break when it gets sub-zero like that. We had failures and they were immediately dealt with. I think we only had to wait 1 day for one truck because of the part that was actually damaged on it. But, and just also keep in mind, if I can, there are some streets in our town that are not our responsibility, but it's still taking care of our people, taking care of the residents. And I saw where even though it was county or state that should have been taking care of something, we can't afford to let our residents deal with waiting on the state or the county, and we're not always a high priority for them. And that's the other thing that's important, is making sure that we make everything accessible, not just the roads we're legally responsible to take care of. And DJ's guys applied the right balance of that, and extremely commendable. Thank you very much. I imagine the police had their hands full too with the number of
We froze our butts off on lots of accidents.
yeah. So yeah. Anyhow, we have anything from the other department heads?
Jim, did you have something you'd like to say at all?
No, I don't think so. I did issue the very first building permit of 2014 today, so we're off and running.
It's good.
That concludes.
Okay. The budgeting is beginning though, correct? For,
That is correct. Yes, would you like me to mention that?
please.
Yeah, sure. It's January, and in our recent staff meeting, noted that our budgeting process will begin so that we can have a budget in place and appropriations approved by the beginning of the new fiscal year, which is May 1. So department heads will be receiving a budget worksheet and entering their numbers, and then I will be meeting with them along with the finance director to homogenize those numbers and make a presentation to the village board in the upcoming months. Thank you, sir.
I didn't actually have anything specifically on my agenda, but I did obviously want to make sure that we address the phenomenal work that our public works and our police departments both were doing in the storm management, if you will. Thank you to both departments for that. One of the things I did want to bring up for discussion to see if it's worth revisiting and review, and that is a couple of years ago an ordinance was passed that prohibited parking across the end of your own driveway. And I want to clarify why I'm bringing this up. I know that the police, during this time of the year when there's snow and we got to kick cars off the street, we have a tendency to say, get them off the street in any way possible, even though that might technically also be a violation of the other ordinances. There's certain issues with safe routes to school, there's just the passability of the pedestrians and things like that. You get school children who need to catch a bus. We don't want people walking in the streets under any circumstances, especially when the plows are out. I saw it scary, the potential. Somebody's out there wearing white, of all things, on a whiteout night, and you just can't see them. And but even in the subdivisions, you see, I saw somebody walking up Wilson Road the other day. There's a sidewalk there, but, you know, but getting into the subdivisions where you got school children dealing with and things of that sort, I'm concerned about making sure that we reemphasize the importance of safety for our pedestrians. They're less protected than anybody else that's out there. Don't want to, falling in something, whatever else. So what I'd like to consider is reevaluating the one ordinance that was passed a couple of years ago, and it had to do with, Bill, I think you remember, that be it the summertime when people would like to block the end of their own driveway so kids know this is the end of your driveway, so that if they're playing ball and they're basketball or something like that in your driveway, you don't have to worry about the kids knowing this is the end of your, you don't have to worry about things rolling out in the street. I've done it in the past before there was an ordinance about it. It's like, it helps the kids know. In the snowy conditions, there's actually that area that would be the, what do they call it, the approach technically? Apron. That is the area between the sidewalk and the street. Typically, you could, if you got a 2-car wide driveway, you can park a car sideways on your own apron. In the winter, snowy season like this, that seems to me to be a relevant option as compared to blocking the sidewalk as well. So my suggestion would be that we reevaluate the ordinance and allow for the owner of the property, not somebody who just wants to block them in, because that would be a problem, but the owner of the property would be allowed to park across the end of their own driveway or apron. I don't want to prohibit residents from doing what's relevant and yet safety conscious in other regards as well. I think there's a blend of that. It could be. What ordinance do you have right there?
No, this was, we just passed this
2 years ago.
2 years ago, or at least a year and a half ago, if not 2 years ago.
And I know you and I both stated our objections pertaining to some of it, but now I'm seeing it from another perspective regarding sidewalks and everything else.
I personally think we should leave it alone, because I see it happening all the time, and I'm not knocking, the department, but I see too many cars that are blocking the sidewalks that people are trying to walk on, And if we're gonna start fluctuating this.
No, I'm not saying do not
No.
want the sidewalks. I'm
No, I
saying-
understand what you're saying, you're saying going sideways, either we leave it alone, or we just abolish it and go back to the way before we made the
Well,
ordinance.
exactly.
So it's just up to
Potentially
everybody.
repealing it, as long as the,
It was a single-purpose ordinance, Your Honor, so you could simply probably repeal that portion.
okay, because during the season, you guys are kind of turning a blind eye to it anyhow. I mean, just because where else are you gonna get people off the street?
That's something we should kick back to the zoning committee to evaluate and make a recommendation.
I don't know that it'd be zoning.
No, it's not, it's
No.
it's a village ordinance, not a planning and zoning
It
ordinance.
had nothing to do with the planning and zoning, we
Those
just,
ordinance.
yeah.
So would you guys be interested in it being brought before the board for the next meeting to possibly repeal that ordinance?
Perhaps even before, you know, if we can get the ordinance number, maybe we can do a special meeting or.
Well, in the interim, just, I mean,
I don't think we need a special meeting for it.
no, but as far as the police department goes, you guys can just,
We use common sense as a rule for public safety. We don't black and white something just because there's a particular ordinance. We're very conscious that EJ needs to get his job done, and people need to have their cars in places. And we're also very aware of the fact that kids need to use the sidewalk, and other people do too. So we pretty much tell people, you know, if you have to do that until the plows go through, great, and then move. So this is all about common sense and using your head when you do this. And for the most part, I would say that's probably
but
what.
allowing a car to park across the apron would still be parallel to the street, but on their own apron would be okay.
Not being illegal anymore would be simpler to say, yes, go ahead and do that, than of course the way that we're.
Okay, so we need to defer to,
If I just might do a quick suggestion.
Sure.
You gotta make sure that the fire department is contacted before you make a decision on that. Because under the conditions we have right now, with the snow furled up on everybody's parkway, that's the only entrance on an emergency for the fire department to get hose or a stretcher or whatever to get up your driveway. That's why you're parked the way you are, so that there's a lane right up to your door for the fire department. So make sure you talk to Chief Nyland about that.
we get a fireman here tonight, you care to offer any insight?
He's on Valley.
I would defer that to Chief Nealon.
Smart man. All right, well, we'll bring it before the board for the next meeting to have some discussion of possible repeal. Okay, thank you. That's all I have for this stuff. And next we have the attorney's report. I'm sorry, if I may, real quick. I know we're about to get into some things pertaining to zoning related issues. We've got a couple of our former zoning board members here as trustees. I want to reiterate, I know I just talked to the P&Z chair this evening. There's a zoning map, and there's a reason for the zoning map. I'm not saying it shouldn't be reevaluated, because perhaps it should, because there's things that, you know, that was established in 1997, I believe it was. As a matter of fact, I think it was your brother was the trustee at the time when it was approved. But we gotta be very careful that we're not just looking at the immediate relevance of somebody's request, but also the long-term ramifications of if you perpetuate something that's inconsistent with the stated purpose of that area. What is that gonna do for our long-term goal to get to that destination of that whole area being commercial or residential or industrial or whatever the case may be? Special use variances have their place. We just have to be really careful that we're not perpetuating an indifference to the maps as they're stated. And do you really want to make sure that you're not creating an environment that's inconsistent with the original plan? So there's a couple of issues before the board tonight that Larry's going to bring up. One of them has to do with a residential property that is actually in a commercially zoned area. And ultimately, you might say, well, it might be 5, 10, 20 years before it becomes an issue. But as soon as you state that you want to allow somebody to perpetuate an inconsistent use, you have no determination of how long that will be unless you stipulate that duration on that, just as a point of reference. So I just want you guys to think about that, and we probably do need to ask our P and Z committee to start reevaluating our zoning. Administrator Wallace, I think we talked about, you know, at some point, we need to have a new comprehensive plan based on new variables that are coming to play, be it the airport, Ileana, whatever the case may be. And I don't see that going backwards, but forward. So keep that in mind too. So, all right, Attorney Krzyzewski, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two items for board consideration. The first item is a request by Patrick and Rebecca Schurz with respect to a variance. An application was filed by Mr. Schurz on November 26th for 5550 West Mill Street. A presentation was made by Mr. Schurz, I believe, who's in the audience tonight, on December 18th before the zoning board. The zoning board made a recommendation to approve the variance. As the mayor was indicating, and Mr. Schurz, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Schurz lives in that premises at the present time. It's zoned commercial, but he's allowed to live there under residential. He's trying to, I believe, refinance the house, and your lender's concern, if it was destroyed, at that point in time, you'd have to, if it's destroyed more than 51%, it would have to go back to commercial. And did I say that correctly, sir?
Yes.
And that the variance in this situation, when you look at a variance, it can't be created by the petitioner. It's an undue hardship. So that's something to be taken into account. In this situation, the hardship wasn't created by the petitioner. But as the mayor indicated, it's something for the board to consider once you give this gentleman or the applicant the variance, that will run with the land. So he's looking for a variance from the board due to refinancing purposes, and his lender brought up this request. So I drafted the ordinance pursuant to the zoning board's recommendations, and it's up for the board's consideration tonight.
I have one question, and I'll open it for the rest of the board. And I don't want to pry, but if you don't mind, what was the duration of the note? 30 years, 15 years, 20 years?
Initial or refi?
Well, the one for the refi.
30.
30 years, so they're looking for a 30-year
Yeah.
guarantee
Yeah.
okay. And I talked to the attorney that if we were to allow something of a, whatever situation like that, that we could possibly set a limit so that it would be consistent with somebody's needs, but yet at the same time not perpetuate beyond that situation where the point of relevance to the insured or the financer or something like that. So, questions or discussion from the board?
Do you have a picture of what the property is? Is this on the south side of the street?
North side of the Mill Street, on the west side of the tracks. Small rural community,
Right.
3 or 4 houses, right there at the south, and in the south there. It's a home that's been there a good number of years.
When was it zoned commercial?
97, or before that,
Oh, that's this one then.
or before that.
So it was residential before it was zoned commercial? Yes.
How long has it been in your family?
We've owned it for 10 years, and the 5 years previous to that, I lived there myself as the tenant of the second floor apartment 5 years prior to that. The property has been there, I'm not exactly quite sure how long, maybe 100 plus years. It's a very old house originally that has been added to or modified over the years, and it's a flat unit. My wife and my family reside on the first floor, and rent out the second floor. And the community is, the immediate area is all residential homes.
It is, and I had this discussion with the P and Z chair, just as another point of reference. A lot of times we can look at it and say, those are residential, it's just in an odd spot. I get it. There again, sometimes we have businesses that are trying to expand
Yes.
along that footprint, and they can't, because now you get stormwater management issues, you've got all sorts of things that have to go into their need for expansion if they're having parking areas, you know, impermeable surfaces, they need extra space. And it does create a little bit of a quandary because we recognize the fact that currently residential is very common right there. A lot of those are 2 stories, you got 2 flats if you will. It's a difficult situation because were there a business interest on the front off the frontage of Governors or something like that, they could very easily need some of that space for off-site, or, you know, nearby parking, or who knows what. And I'm not saying that that's a better use of your property personally, but according to the zoning, it is designed for commercial.
Yes, correct.
But I also understand that your finance company is looking for certain
Yeah, they're
confirmations.
looking for just safeguards. Like I said, we're attempting to refinance, and we're trying to get a 30-year note. And that's one of the stipulations they had, is to get a letter from our variance from the village saying if anything catastrophic were to happen to the building, that we would be allowed to rebuild as is.
And that was anything in excess of 51%, I think is what was stipulated. I mean, there's a certain amount of practicality of that. If it caught on fire, sorry, strike that.
Well, the key that I heard you say, Mr. Shores, is that community. I heard you use the word community.
Yes, sir.
That means you've been there for a while, that means there's other people there.
Yes, most of my
That means
neighbors.
you're not intending to use it for any purpose but to live in, as are your neighbors.
Correct, sir. Most of my neighbors have been in the neighborhood longer than I've been alive.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, and a little bit more discussion. I know the administrator wanted to bring any.
Not necessary at this point, thank you, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion from the board? Do we want to put and I know Trustee Holston acknowledged that, do we want to set any stipulation on this? No time duration or anything else? Okay. Roll call, please.
Trustee Gray,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Horne, Pop,
Yes.
Raisik,
Yes.
and Gonzalez.
Yes.
Ordinance number, sir, with that.
That's going to be ordinance number 1672.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item for the board's review consideration, Mr. Speech is here tonight, and Dr. Patterson. If the board recalls, Dr. Patterson and Mr. Speech have come up before the board, zoning board, I should say, on several occasions. With respect to property, they're looking for a special use permit for 25836 Sunset Drive. They've been here since probably the late summer. The zoning board had a few hearings on this matter. A recommendation was made to approve a special use permit for that property, subject to certain conditions that are set forth in your packet. The special use permit would be limited to 58 parking lanes, secured with a paved parking lot. The conditions are set forth in section 3. The special use permit will be strictly subject to compliance with the conditions. Since this ordinance was given and distributed to the board, we had a brief phone call with Mr. Spezia and Dr. Patterson. The two concerns they had dealt with the clarification, mostly, which would be the second condition. They're requesting the parking of tractor trailers be limited to the lot area located behind the front line of the existing building. And the other condition, there was some discussion about on Monday, dealt with the next to last condition about security personnel and monitoring it. They've asked that the premises be have security personnel on premises from dusk to dawn, as opposed to 24-hour basis on 7 days a week. They explained their rationale that there will someone be on the premises during that time, so they have as much interest as we do, I believe. They have agreed to the other conditions set forth in the special use permit, such as the cameras being accessible to the police department. They also realize all the tractor trailers have to be in operating condition, have to comply with all other applicable provisions of the village code. No abandoned vehicles of any kind will be permitted on the site, and there will be no overnight idling of any tractor trailers at the site. And non-trailered storage containers will be prohibited from parking at the site. It is up for the board's review and consideration. Again, Mr. Spezia is present, and Dr. Patterson came back from Florida, I believe, to talk to the board if there's any questions regarding the terms of this ordinance, or special use permit, I should say.
And then just for clarification, Attorney Petruski, is when something goes from P and Z to the board, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. We have the ability to vote that up or down exactly as presented and or make changes, and if there's a change, then it requires a greater majority, is that correct?
You can always refer it back to the zoning board, Your Honor, for further review. The board has, it's a recommendation from the zoning board. So the board wants to make changes, accept the recommendation as is, you have an option. You also have the option to alter or modify the proposed from the ZBA.
But if it's contrary to the ZBA, then doesn't it require a greater number of votes or no?
But you gotta make a recommendation to refer it back to the zoning.
Before you
board.
can even override it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if, in the case of an override, a complete override, you would have to go back to ZBA.
Well, you have the right to refer it back to the ZBA, or you have the right to say you can table it, or you can deny it. It's up to the board.
Understood. Discussion?
So the only thing we just wanted to clarify too, you made mention about dusk to dawn.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
they'll be monitored 24 hours, but manned dusk to dawn.
The way it would be worded, Trustee Gonzalez, premises will have security personnel on the premises from dusk to dawn 7 days a week.
But not during the daytime.
Pardon me?
But not during the daytime.
I think someone will be present at all times.
Wasn't it a security person?
I mean, so if somebody's going to be present at all times, would that, we're not saying he's got to be,
No, I understand. I want to make sure I didn't misinterpret Dr. Patterson or Mr. Spezia. Was I right on that, or?
We had talked about that the other day. It's my wife's 60th birthday party tonight. But I've been planning for 6 months. And if I'm not recognizable the next time you've seen it, she didn't take it as well as I thought she would. Okay. Trucking business, a lot of times, we expect most of these trucks to be gone in the daytime. If they come in at night, we expect to have mainly empty trucks there. We expect if there's over-the-road trucks, they'll come in for a day or two, they'll rent a lot. I imagine they'll sit empty most of the time. These guys want somewhere to come back to after 3 or 4 days on the road. They may be there, leave it overnight, and take it and deliver and go again. They don't make no money in the trucking business in the city. That's the main thing. The two problems we've had out there have been from disgruntled, and correct me if Chief, 2 disgruntled employees. One came back and stole 3 buckets of copper fittings out of his former employer, who was deceased at the time. And we had one recently where somebody had a warehouse and he knew there was electronics and never came back and got that. Other than that, in the 30 years I've had to do with the property, we've had no problems. What we want to do is put a security fence around it, as high as I can. We'll go with the variances on that. And the Administrator Wallace and I have talked about that. We want to put lighting in, and we'll face that away from Dutch Valley behind us. I've gotten into that problem down in Florida. I've learned their lesson on that. So we'll face the lighting into the building and down on the lot and not interfere with the neighbors or interstate. We'll have security cameras that will be linked to the police department in Monee, and I'll put a sign out front that tells everybody that. And we can also monitor them in Florida. My brother and I can monitor them there, and the security guard will be there at night monitoring them too. We want no guns, and I brought that issue up. We'll hire somebody for a set of eyes there. If there's any problem, we'll call the police department to handle it. That's as secure as I can make it. I think a security guard in the daytime would be sitting, monitoring an empty lot most of the time.
So you just, restating what I had said, so it's monitored 24 hours a day and just manned dusk to dawn.
And dusk to dawn, we talked this over the other day, instead of getting into difference in AM and dawn and dusk, we thought darkness is usually when you have your bad boys come out. And if we monitor it at nighttime, I think we'll cut down all the crime. I certainly don't want any problems out there. But we're almost 4 deep in security.
I know there was a fair amount of discussion at the last meeting in review of what P&Z had submitted. Any follow-up to that at all? I know there's some concerns.
I'll stipulate it here.
I think the concern P&Z has is
roads are not particularly good shape out there. This is not, as was pointed out by several of the people from the neighborhood that objected, this is not a revenue generator for the village, but it is going to be an expense generator. And that the village roads that are there are going to have to be repaired, possibly sooner than later. That's not his problem, it's ours.
Right.
But it's a concern. It's a concern the roads will be paved. We've talked about that with him when I was on the zoning committee. Because it does say in this agreement they'll be paved, I'll accept that, but I want to make note of that. It was a sticking issue before, a year ago, when that was discussed. I was on the zoning committee then as well, and that was discussed then. But he says he's going to do it. Up to the administration to make sure he does it.
And I believe, and just, this is slightly unrelated, but it just might refer to the council for a second. In other communities, they actually, to Trustee Holson's point, what other communities do when it comes to finding a token revenue from, service base that are not taxable or whatever else for other reasons?
I do work with another village where we have a large trucking base. We struck a deal with that trucking company to pay so much per truck. The concerns you have though is trucking sometimes is Interstate Commerce Commission. Unless the person wants to sign off on it voluntarily, it's not real easy. And it's minimal. We collect some money, but it's minimal. And if Dr. Patterson is maintaining the premises, hopefully there'll be a need for our police to
The majority of the wear and tear on that road is Omega. They come out of there 10, 12, 14 times a day, sometimes if they're building close. That's what the wear and tear on the road has been recently.
I certainly agree with that.
Yeah.
We're not disputing that.
What
We're
we're
just,
trying to do is cut down the traffic. Actually, the guys come in, they sit, and they'll be in and out. Where they're not gonna have multiple trips in and out of there. A lot of our trucks won't go out but once or twice every 3 or 4 days to a week. I expect it to sit empty most of the time, to tell you the truth.
Dr. Patterson, we're not arguing with you. We're just trying to.
no, and we're really bringing up another point, that the more we get into being perpetuating the truck stop atmosphere around, the hub of the interchanges right there, there's a lot of wear and tear on our roads in general, not just pertaining to near your property, but, we need to evaluate as a community, unrelated to this, but as a general overview, we need to evaluate, should we be charging some sort of a parking fee to those places such as the truck stops or whatever else that are, and that's just something we need to evaluate. So that's a different point, that was just merely being brought up for the trustees.
The vast majority of trucks that we park in there are already a problem. They're more of a problem because they're in and out and all over the village roads.
Understood.
I'm trying to get them back on the other side, out of the way, and get them off the village roads. They can take their cars and come into town if they want to. If they want to eat or do something like that and leave the additional congestion off the roads.
Okay. Any more questions for Dr. Patterson?
Yeah, I don't have a question for lawyer Larry. Larry, I attended a couple of the meetings with this particular item. And I did have to leave. I have choir practice in the meeting of the P&Z, in the middle of the P&Z meeting. I thought it was discussed that one of the conditions would be that they couldn't do repair work on the trucks. Am I wrong on that? I could be wrong. I thought that was discussed.
The discussion was.
I understand, excuse me, David, I understand an emergency like a flat tire or something, but actually.
You're talking about where they'd actually be doing work out in the
park there, yeah.
backyard,
There
basically.
wouldn't be any mechanical work going on. Is that correct? I don't see it in this.
You could be right, trustee Pop,
I would like to see that added, if that is what.
Right, so we don't have a motion yet.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure we get all the discussion out. So they're asking for an adjustment to, on ours, it would be.
Section 3.
Well, actually, it's line number 60 on page 3. And trustee Pop, you're asking to have an insertion that should have been there, if I understood correctly, pertaining to no mechanical services being or repairs to,
Repair work.
however you describe that,
With the vehicles or whatever.
outside of the buildings themselves.
Outside, yes.
That's in the minutes of the first meeting we had with him a couple months ago. I remember seeing that in the minutes, what discussion was in the minutes.
So,
Didn't get over here for some reason.
so could you provide us with the wording for that, please, Mr. Olson? Just roughly, Larry can flush it out if we need to.
Don't do no work.
Guys, if they start doing work out there, they're gone. This is not a truck stop. I don't want repairs down there. We may have to jump a truck occasionally if it won't start.
I get it.
We'll have electric, but I do not want any repairs out there. Then you get oil and grease
And the
and junk all
discussion
over
was
the place.
specifically with
I
the
agree.
building, not with
That's
the outside,
definitely-
with what's going on inside the building, that would be no repair work being done. That was the specific thing that was discussed with
Well,
the building.
I'm confused about that one, because I don't think you can regulate the type of business going on inside of the building in that regard. But outside of the property, I think you could. Larry? Is that correct? All right, we couldn't regulate what goes on inside the building, such as mechanical work services, you know, like if he's renting out the building to a repair shop. We can regulate that, but the things that are taking place in the backyard pertaining to the special use,
Correct.
we could regulate that no repairs, and which sounds like you're fine with that anyhow. So, Administrator Wallace, I know you had something to,
Mr. Mayor, my only comment was that maybe it could be, simply be in addition to line 51, where we already require the tractor trailers shall be in operating condition.
and no repairs.
And no repairs shall take place other than emergency repairs, or even if you don't want to say that,
I
but
wouldn't do that.
and no repairs shall take place.
Right. Mechanical services,
Exactly.
or repairs. Larry, can you?
Yes, sir.
And then you're gonna be able to adjust the line 60, 61 pertaining to their daytime exemption for,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Now,
Dr.
jump
Benson?
even dead battery. Okay, no mechanical as far as grease and oil or making a mess. I agree 100%. I don't want to cover that.
Or banging on the sidewalls of the trailers and things of that sort.
Mr. Mayor, please.
I'm having fun with it. All right. So, are we ready to move forward with this?
I make the motion that we accept. the
As amended.
favorable Motion.
Yes, sir, to approve the ordinance as amended.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Okay, so that's Holston and Reason. Any discussion? You look like you got a question.
Ordinance number,
Yeah, ordinance number.
That's going to be 1673.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Holston,
Yes.
Horne,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Raisik,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Gonzalez.
yes.
Okay. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Hope your wife has a good birthday.
Get back to the birthday party, go.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right, under the officials' reports, I know we got two items on there. Trustee Raisik had brought to my attention a couple things that he would like to have added on there, and I'll defer to him for more information. But one of them had to do with, we recently completed a collective bargaining agreement with our public works as well as our police. And Trustee Raisik was wanting to take a little bit of time to review our practices as they pertain to that. So I know he's already met with the finance director and is inquiring regarding some information so that we can move forward with that. So that'll be on the agenda for next week to see if you've made any progress during that time. What was the other thing you had that you wanted to deal with?
The airwork ordinance.
Okay.
We're working on.
Do you have information to provide at this time?
Got a couple ordinances from surrounding town. We're gonna get a couple more ordinances from Cook County, Kankakee County. Specifically, want to get some ordinances from towns that have a highway that we after these up.
Okay. Is that all right, everybody on that as well, so that Trustee Raisik will report back to us in the next meeting or next couple meetings.
Do we want to add that as item 3? Any questions before
It'll be 3 and 4, technically, because raising's gonna have two items added for raising. Does that make sense? Okay. What have you found thus far? Most towns have?
Reg ordinances, pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Chief, if you could also work on Anthony on that and the other issue pertaining to the enforceability. So when he's presenting back, hopefully he'll have had a chance to meet with you also to deal with, I mean, it's great to have policies and ordinances, but how enforceable are they? You know, what practices can we make sure that they're not too weak to stand up to what we need to deal with? So, thank you. And trustee Pop,
I have no report this
I
time.
know you're still working on
Slow.
it. Trustee Horne, do you have anything at this time?
I do. I was tasked with the job of researching prices of P-tickets in the general neighborhood that we reside in, the area, I should say. So, looked at 3 villages, Peatone, Crete, and Beecher, with their pricing on their P-tickets. Now, Peatone and Crete, both their costs for P-tickets, by the way, what do we charge for them?
$25.
Okay, 25. So Beecher let's switch gears then. Beecher charges the exact same, 25 and 50 if they're late. Let
me pause for just a second. I have a question here. There was something that came up recently that has to do with having to set a rate at a certain level, not to discount it. I mean, you can discount for early payment, but you can't, the enforceability. John, do you know what I'm talking about?
You can't,
Set a lower rate
it's
than
been
charge
some
extra?
time now that you can't automatically jack the price up because it's like, it has to go to an administrative hearing officer. The administrative hearing officer has to have the ability to enforce an increase after a certain date. But we can't do that automatically. We did that before. We eliminated that practice with the administrative hearing process because it was incorrect.
All right, so what town is that, Beecher?
That's Beecher.
Okay, that's fine. I just
They
wanted
may
to.
be in the process of changing that.
Could be,
I don't know.
could be.
That I'm just reporting what I have. Parking in handicap zones is $250 in Beecher. Now, Peatone and Crete, their P-tickets are $100, but there's a 50% discount, 50% off if paid within 10 days. So that's the inverse of what you're talking about. So those are the villages that I researched. So pretty much runs the gamut. And Peatone said once people got over the initial shock of the price of the P-tickets, they don't have too much of a problem with it.
Well, and since they're being so gracious to discount it if they pay it right away, right?
Right, well, that's a good incentive to get it taken care of.
Sure. Okay, all right.
So we're a little bit on the low end, it sounds like.
Sure.
I could do some further research if you want me to.
And what are some of the other, because they're not all just, I know they're all classified as P-tickets, but there's a whole list of.
There's a gamut that we have because of the administrative process in itself. One variable would be we already have had our own, essentially Bluetooth ordinance for a while. That P-ticket is by ordinance set at $75. Our handicap is $250, just like everybody else in the state. Push that up, and we're in line with that because we have the IDC adopted as our code. So there are certain areas where we can do that. However, our base fee is based on the base fee that was set some years ago. And for us to do it, would require us to have an amendment to an ordinance to be able to move the base fee up to a certain other level.
Okay, so that's something we need to also evaluate. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Trustee. Anybody else?
Yes. Met recently with the finance director. Thank you, Mr. Wallace, for making it available to us to review the 2013 audit results. In the process of doing that, I asked him to provide a copy of this year's budget, which he did do. I was a little concerned, and am now concerned still, that at this point of the year, we're $250,000 in deficit, with the projection based upon my conversation with him to be $400,000 in deficit at the end of the year. That, with a village of 5,000 people, is $80 a person. Since we're a committee as a whole, I think we might want to consider having a special meeting to talk about our finances.
Okay. Understood.
Did I miss something, Mr. Wallace?
I would respectfully disagree with your conclusions there, but
I've got a copy of the budget here tonight, I can go through it.
I understand, and as indicated when that budget was passed, is we passed the appropriations and they were fairly high without the expectation of spending those totally. And in certain areas will certainly be over in line items and so forth, but in overall, this village will not see negative numbers in our.
My concern is the general budget as of December 30th, according to the statement that was given to me, is $250,767.99 in the negative. Revenues, 72% of budget, which is good for 8 months of the year. Or, I'm sorry, 63%, which is good, but expenses 72%. I asked the director at that point to give me some information. I have not heard back from him, so I'm not sure what some of the answers are, but either way, we're $250,000 in the general fund, the deficit right now. According to this, I'm not saying we could end that way, you may be right, but I think we ought to be meeting as a committee as a whole to discuss in detail.
I don't disagree, and one of the things I want to make sure of is that our database, our locus, our management system that we use, is got information in there correctly. One of the concerns I've had has been that when we tried to run a treasurer's report at the end of October, it was a ridiculous difference compared to what really was, all because the system itself did not adequately track the information necessary. So I'm not disputing your numbers, but I know I understand that. But what I'm saying is I definitely disputed, or was alarmed at the very least, about what I saw at the end of October. And what you're talking about is not even a tenth of what I saw. So we do need to have that kind of a meeting. We do need to have that meeting with the finance director, and I would hope that prior to that meeting, whenever we would schedule that we would have each of the trustees as much as possible take the time to meet with our treasurer and our finance director to get a better handle on the situation and the numbers as they stand and as we need to budget for the future.
Okay, that's a good point. And that's why I met with him. I asked him if he believed the numbers were correct. He said yes, he did.
Okay.
I would also suggest that in future meetings that the trustees be provided a copy of the budget for the meetings so that we have an idea, because all we're getting is a spend sheet here. It doesn't tell us where we are in the budget.
I know we are going to be taking steps to have a monthly review by department breakdown if possible. And that will be, Administrator Wallace, what were some of the steps I know that you were stipulating that we're going to be doing?
There is some opportunity for corrections on the budget as it stands now. The finance director is reconciling bank statements from the beginning of the fiscal year, carrying that all the way through, and should be completed prior to February. And at the beginning of each month, there will be placed in the trustees' boxes a budget comparison sheet that shows income and expense revenues as it pertains to the current fiscal year budget. So you'll have those on a monthly basis, that those will be in draft form, because in order to receive a December budget comparison sheet, he doesn't receive the bank statements for December until the middle of January.
I understand that.
But nevertheless, if there's good accounting numbers through the process, there's very little room for variation there from a draft budget comparison to a finalized budget comparison. But beginning in February or sooner, as soon as it becomes available, as soon as all the bank reconciliations have been reviewed, then the trustees monthly will receive a budget comparison printout for this.
And one of my concerns has, because of exposure with other organizations that I've seen struggle with bad situations, would be that our system be utilized efficiently from the beginning and not just allowed to cripple along. Our database system that we use has got us hamstrung, to say the least, in how we deal with things. I'm not suggesting we replace it, because there's not a lot of options in this industry. But we need to do a better job of making sure that our provider of that software actually help us achieve the expectations we need, instead of having to do everything as a journal entry. How many journal entries did we have last year? Do you remember, Dave?
72, I wanna say.
For the end of the year?
Yes,
Yeah, for the
that was
treasurer?
for the auditors.
Right.
Well, we have an audited copy that was supposedly good. We're using the same accounting practices as last year. And the report that we have says we're 250,000 or 10% deficit at this point of the year with 4 months left. As a trustee, and I would hope the other trustees would feel the same way, I'd like to get involved sooner rather than later.
Agreed. So that being the case, and I think you've got a great point there, I don't want any one person to be the only one that knows what's going on. I think it's important, especially on issues of this level,
Absolutely.
that each of us have a better understanding. And I'm gonna say it like this, not everybody has the same area of expertise. That's okay. You might go in there feeling like you need a lot of caffeine to pay attention to the details. Okay, I'll buy you a case of Mountain Dew if I have to, but I need you guys to pay attention to the details. This is important for all of us. So before we schedule a special meeting, I need to know approximately what's a reasonable time frame for each of you to have sat down with the finance director and hopefully the treasurer as well, because there needs to be that synchronization of information there. So 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you know, a month from now, I just need to know, because we're getting into the budget process, and that'll help each of us do a better job with the budgeting itself. So, is a month from now a reasonable amount of time, or do you think sooner than that?
I think a month's too long.
Okay,
That's why I'm recommending we meet as a committee of the whole, specifically for the purposes of discussing the budget and the finances. Now, just for your information, fellow trustees, I spent an hour and a half with Darrell that particular day. He's very helpful, very knowledgeable. Went through, not line by line, but I'd gone through a lot of them before I went to talk to him, so I had some questions for him, and I'm still waiting for answers on those questions. But I think I think copies ought to be made to the committee as soon as to the trustees as soon as possible, and we should schedule a meeting. Mr. Wallace, you say you'll have something by the end of February, so I think it's going to take more than a board meeting to do this. I think it's going to take a meeting, a separate meeting, and again, we're a committee of the whole.
sure,
So it needs to be involved in all the trustees.
agreed. I'm just saying that if people want to do their homework before they get to that meeting, it'll make it easier for everyone. So I'm asking, how much time do you guys need to do that homework before we call that meeting?
3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah.
I don't say a month,
Okay.
any more time with 2 weeks.
And it's not necessarily easy to digest if numbers aren't your thing, but it's important that we deal with it anyway. I'll look at the calendar real quick. Would it be better to do it on a Saturday or something as compared to an evening meeting? I'm just trying to figure it out, if it's
I
gonna take.
think
a fair
previously
amount of
that they
time.
meet on Monday nights, when they had committees.
It was whenever they saw fit. We could do it on the, it's whenever we decide is relevant. So today is the 8th.
Yeah, we'll probably have to check the village hall schedule to see when.
There's not a meeting that I see on the 29th. Maybe 3 weeks, we could have it on the 5th Wednesday. Would that be would that be enough time? Wednesday the 29th? We'd have a special meeting, or a committee of the whole, however it needs to be labeled, pertaining to finance and budget.
If we're gonna start working on next year's budget, I think we need to reconcile this year's first.
I agree, but I'm just saying it's a good start, so,
Does that give you time, Mr. Wallace, to do what you need to do? Reconciling anything?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, sir.
okay, so January 29th, Wednesday, regular board meeting time, 6:30, okay? Okay.
I must make a statement that I'm mildly upset that David got that information, because I requested it about a month ago. And I heard nothing since. I did tell him there was no rush, but I haven't heard from him, and David has the information that I pretty much requested a very similar thing to that.
Well, I did schedule a meeting, Trustee Pop, and I did call, as Mr. Wallace suggested, and did schedule a meeting, and Darrell did set a meeting with me. And Mr. Wallace, for the record, I did advise him I'd be discussing this at the meeting tonight, so he was aware of that. I assumed he discussed it with you.
I had a meeting with him too, David. It wasn't an hour and a half, like 5 minutes. I don't take much time to make my statement what I'd like. I never heard.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of my expectations was to have our department heads available at least once a month for a board to have interaction with. I was preferring to have that the first meeting of the month, but like with EMA, that's not always gonna work well, because it seems like that coincides with the Will County mutual aid group for the EMA. But certainly for this meeting, I'm gonna expect that Darrell would be present for that meeting, and that he avail himself to each of the trustees as reasonably as possible to spend some time going over the budget and addressing those things. And if you could, just so that there's a little bit of points of interest, David, the things that you brought up, leave those, a copy of those with Norb or the finance director.
I'll send an email to Mr. Wallace, let him send it who he wants to send it to.
Well, I'm just saying that way, if we keep adding a list of questions, we can each build on that as a possibility. So if the finance director, and he is the person that we deal with on that, then make sure that he knows those, so he's actually got answers for all of those at the combined meeting on the 29th. So to each of you might have different questions, but it's very relevant.
So let me clarify, Mr. Mayor, you want me to direct my email to who?
Finance director.
To the finance director, and copy anybody else?
You can copy me, you can copy the administrator, it's fine with me. I, because of open meetings, you don't want it to include more than, you don't want to have more than 2 officials, elected officials, in the circulation of those emails. So you can send one to me, carbon the administrator, carbon finance director. You could actually carbon Norb as well if you wanted to, as a treasurer, and that would be relevant, because he's not a voting participant of the body.
Okay.
Just like Wayne can always be included in everything, other than electoral board issues, because he is not a vote for those issues as well. But I think for the matters at hand, I think the administrator, myself, and the treasurer would all be relevant, and we can make sure you have email addresses available for each of those so you know who they are.
I've got it.
Okay.
Trustee Holston, just for the record, Darrell did forward your email, and I have prepared responses for you on all those questions that you had on there.
Okay.
Be happy to share that with you offline.
Okay.
So we'll add that to our meetings and our, we'll put it out on the sign, et cetera. Okay. Anybody else under officials report? Old business?
I just want to bring up, I know this is going back a ways, but I'm going to bring it up again because now it's becoming relevant in my life and probably many others. Vehicle stickers, 2-year stickers. I know it was this year. And we were gonna find out, because it hadn't happened yet, what if, in June 2014, somebody buys a car? Do they have to pay the $200 or the $100 for the 2-year sticker, or it's gonna be prorated for 1 year? And what about folks who are turning 65 in 2014? Are they gonna be prorated because they will get the senior rate? Or be qualified for that senior rate in 2014?
And I personally did not like the 2-year program. I understand it minimized the administration in the front office, but I think you got a couple points of relevance. As long as there's gonna be a 2-year program, there's no reason why we couldn't amend the ordinance to allow for anything related to the second year could be prorated. I think that's reasonable that you would have that consideration. So if somebody's going to, and you can split the rates, I don't know if that creates more of an administrative issue or not. But if you know the rates and you know that somebody's gonna turn 65, the magic number, during that second year, but then you gotta be careful about splitting hairs, because somebody's gonna say, well, I don't turn 65 till July. You're gonna have to draw that line somewhere where it's prorated on an annual.
I'm not asking to split hairs, I'm just asking.
No, I understand. So is that, so you would like to have that ordinance brought before the board for a possible revision, review and revision to allow for any other points of interest in that besides?
1-year sticker because somebody just purchased a new vehicle, and if somebody is going to be turning senior, and that's just 2 possibilities, I'm sure there are several others.
So you basically want to be able to have a prorated second year option, yes, sir?
I believe the current ordinance allows for proration for replacement of a sticker if you purchase a new vehicle, for proration if you're in the middle of a cycle. I do not know how it pertains to seniors. I can't recall that.
And just clarifying that of the 2 points that I brought up, buying a new vehicle, not turning 65 is what I
Okay.
not turning 65 this year.
You don't get
It's the same.
Buying a new sticker, it would be the same as a replacement sticker for your vehicle because you paid the fee for the 2 years.
Okay. So, Clerk Agent, could we pull that ordinance, have it available for the next meeting for consideration of a review to the verbiage on it so that we can look at the possibility of, actually just get a copy to Trustee Gonzalez and let her review it. Thank you. And add it to the officials. Issues. Prorated second year for the stickers. Just to confirm, you're only referring to a 12-month issue, not the 12-24 split, not anything broken down as a subcomponent of that, like 11 months or 10 months or anything else.
Well, I can do all kinds of math if you like me to. I
No,
can split
I'm trying to
hairs.
keep it simple for the front office. That's all. I mean, okay.
Well, if we're gonna do electronic, if we have the ability to purchase vehicle stickers online, it's gonna be happy much.
Perhaps we should, would you want to,
I'll do it, yeah.
okay, would you like to look at a few other municipalities and see what they're doing, if they do prorated any smaller than that? I'm thinking probably not, but,
I'm sure we'll probably find very few that are actually doing it
okay.
for that reason.
Well, we could reconsider the multi-year option as well. That's something more. So,
Discuss all this.
yes. Respectful trustee Pop, there's a few new players,
I know.
and they represent concerns that they're hearing today based on what's happened. So,
Understand.
anybody else under old or new business?
I have an item under new business, if you don't mind. We have this beautiful thing with all phone numbers, and it's, doesn't have a lot of them. I think we should get a new one.
Sure.
We still have George Pearson on here, and I know that's just recent, a lot of new employees. I'd like to see us get a new, this is great.
Where'd you get that? I don't have
You know, what is that?
What is that?
I don't have this.
Yeah, right, I don't got it.
He has your phone number at all. This is new the employees,
He's still at a Michelle's desk.
the office, administrator, the police department, public water, and different departments.
Did you put that in your email?
What?
You must-
Emails, don't even bother me with that, I want one of these. Up to date. That's all I'm asking for.
Okay.
A nice single sheet of paper that's got everyone's name and phone number on it. I don't see a big problem.
Anything else from the officials? I believe one of our department heads had a comment they'd like to make.
I'm gonna ask a request respectfully if the board will allow for new chairs in the boardroom here, because we sit here for a long time. You know, you guys are nice and comfy in the swivel cushion chairs, but for 2.5, 3 hours, I sit at a DMV every 8 hours, or every 8 years to get my license renewed, and it's not this bad. So I'm gonna request that maybe we can get some comfy chairs out.
Maybe as soon as we resolve our $250,000.
That's your opinion.
You want to buy a couple?
Get your seat cushions there.
Duly noted. I'll take it under advisement. Sir.
I do have something under new business. The village is in receipt of a outdoor lighting grant in the amount, aggregate amount of $9,511.80. If you will recall, last year we received indoor lighting grant for a total of $25,589.49. That's how we got these lights and lights throughout the village and the interior of our buildings, the park building and so forth. So just wanted to make the board aware of that, and we will move forward with that after further information comes out. And we'll look to reduce some outdoor lighting. That's all I have, sir.
Does that pertain to street lighting or just on public property in general?
Municipal lighting for our buildings, exterior of our buildings.
Okay. Good.
There will be some stipulations that are forthcoming, so I don't have all the details at this point, but the award was released. And it comes from two places, the Illinois Clean Energy Community Foundation in the amount of $3,207, and then Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus is the biggest contributor at $6,304.80. So, a couple of combined efforts there.
Thank you. With nothing else from the officials, we have open to the public. Are you guys gonna sing for us or what?
We are, of course. I'm Margaret Horne. I am the interim president for the Creamery Board, the Save the Creamery Committee. These are a lot of the board members. 3 of us, which is Mary Brockmiller and Christy Holston, who was a dearest, and me, I used to be a Palin. Our families have been in this community for over 100 years each, so it's kind of historical. Then we have Judy Pop, who her and her husband have been very active in the community, as well as Diane Stacy, who's been active in the library board. So I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of months ago, you came and talked, kind of joined our little meeting that we have monthly. And after you kind of visited with us, talked to us, we had a couple ideas, and out of that came this letter. So I am going to read it to you so all the board can hear it. And I'll give you your own copy. Okay. I hate to read it. Okay. Dear Mayor Farquhar and Village of Monee Board of Trustees, the Monee Creamery Foundation was organized in October of 2011 to save the Creamery building established in 1890 from an imminent danger of being demolished. A group of concerned citizens, under the leadership of David and Christy Holston, joined together to marshal resources to save and restore the historic structure, one of the few landmark buildings remaining in Monee. With grateful hearts to the Village of Monee for agreeing to stop the demolition, today the creamery stands saved, backed by the community, which is which has a greater appreciation for its historic significance. The foundation is now at a turning point. With the building saved, it's time to define strategic direction for the use of the creamery. The foundation maintains that only by forming a strategic partnership with the village can the building be put to the most productive use. Therefore, the foundation respectfully submits this proposal for the mayor and the village to consider. The village and foundation, well, the first one, the village and foundation will work together to define a strategic plan for the future use of the Creamery building that will most benefit the community. As the foundation has representatives from the oldest families in Monee, the village agrees that the historic preservation of Monee's origins will be a primary goal. And 3, that the foundation will transfer all donated funds to the village with the understanding that the village will continue to financially support the maintenance and development of the creamery according to the agreed upon strategic direction. The foundation again thanks Mayor Farquhar and the village board for its continued support of the creamery. We would like to meet with you at the earliest opportunity to discuss this proposal and to continue working together to ensure Monee's future by preserving its past. Sincerely, Carter Horne. And so take it from there, guys.
Any of the trustees have any comments? Sorry about that.
Yes, you do.
Was that your comment, sir? I'm obviously prejudiced, as the record will indicate I am.
It looks like about 3 of you are.
We do have a little.
Hold on, I might want to interject here, perhaps 4 of you, considering that there was a William Gray that was once the owner of that.
Pardon?
There once was a William Gray that was the owner of that building.
I think that the Creamy Foundation has done a good job of putting this out in front of the public. Public's done a good job of indicating they'd like to have support of it. We've had both the government officials and private individuals and businesses in the area of Monee support this. I think the foundation has indicated they're headed toward becoming more of an historical society in nature. Their expertise is not in physically supporting the building. That leaves us up people who are more comfortable standing up than they are sitting on a chair all night. I think that this would be something good to work out with them. We've discussed on numerous occasions, a number of people, how this building can be used for a number of things. Parks and recreation, the economic development, maybe even a place for the chamber to meet, historical reference. There's a number of things that this building can be used for, but to move forward, we need to be able to meet the 2 of us and start working toward that. So I certainly agree with what they said.
And I know we recently approved and had performed a survey of the property, all the municipal property right here, and that was included within that. And certainly to be able to identify, one of the things that I know was standing in the way at one point was the issue of ADA compliance, because how do you get up to that landing? And DJ Crizel, our superintendent of public works, and I had had a discussion and reviewed without absolute expertise in the matter, but there was potentially the ability to put a ramp that would loop back, that would actually be off of the, is that the west side of the building?
Have to be, lots of the engineering mission.
Right, but there were some possibilities on that. So it's not that far-fetched to be able to provide that level of accessibility to get to the main floor. But you gotta realize, second floor may or may not be a functional thing, but at least to be able to get people in the building, to be able to do a function, will be
But we have,
any number of things.
yeah, we also have that donated a number of historical items that might be really neat for the community to have access to, even if it's just as part of the decor of the building. We don't care, but it would be neat if we could use them.
For the record, the architect that went through it, for a former village architect that went through and did the inspection for the structural this summer, indicated that this is the finest example of lockboard stone he has seen in the state of Illinois. Still preserved. It's the best preserved lockboard stone facility in the state of Illinois.
Good. And structurally, I believe it was,
Structurally, it's fine, there's a few things that need to be done, but relatively minor. We still have people, they still have people, foundation. I am a member of the foundation, I'll put it on record. I'm not an officer. But the foundation does have people, I think we're still willing to help. We can tap into that as a village. So I think a partnership is a good thing. The village probably doesn't want to take it over completely, but the foundation doesn't have the capability to do it either. So I think a partnership is a good way to keep the community involved and yet use the expertise that's available at the village level to do some of the things physically that might have to be done.
and just as a point of reference, we are a growing community. We don't want to lose our landmarks. But sometimes it's a matter of finding instead of getting ahead of ourselves, it may be a matter of keeping it at the back of our mind, putting it on the bookshelf, if you will, until such time as we can identify a best use. It may not be this year, it may not be next year, but there are certain things that have been done, things that can continue to be done, but at least it's got a safe roof, it's a safe structure. There's some things that can be done to it that might be a matter of just simply getting some grants, for one thing or another. And we have to identify what is it going to serve the best purpose of the village. Is a landmark that stands, that we can recognize, or something that will actually be more functional than that? A lot of that's gonna come down to cost and relevance to our needs. We may not have the exact need right now. 5 years from now, we might have a great need for it, and we can purpose it accordingly. So we just need to make sure that if our goal is to keep it landmark and functional one way, it's not a bad thing. And meanwhile, constantly be looking for grants that might avail themselves to being used for a particular thing. So, any other trustees have any?
I'd like to say I'd love to help too, that I have been working on actually history of Monee since I was with the school district and have found some really, really neat things too. So, that we don't have a really good historical base makes me sad, and I'm glad to see that you guys are working on it.
Great, well, thank you.
And down the line, we did have a home earmarked for the proceeds from it. It was donated to the village, but with the intent, I believe, that the proceeds from that would go to restoring the creamery.
Yeah,
How that works legally.
That is no longer an option. That's no longer an option. The house has been sold.
Okay.
We had an opportunity to win them, closed.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else, ladies?
No, just, we do want the communication to remain open. We want
Always.
to keep moving forward. I'm not saying we want the building usable next year, but we do see that if we keep doing the baby steps forward, we will keep it from getting demolished.
We also just need to make sure that when we start doing things in the vicinity of that, of how that's gonna affect it. I thought it was great when baseball wanted to move the fence, because now you can walk all the way around the building. Things like that lend themselves to a cooperative effort in every regard. So we just need to be cognizant before we go doing stuff immediately in proximity to it, that ultimately, how does it affect our potential use of it, just like zoning, so.
Mr. Mayor, I believe Mr. Pop was asked by the previous administration to be the liaison and has been serving as liaison. So hopefully he'll continue to do that.
Well, I think it seems like you have a good infiltration of the entire board. So I'm not too worried about that specifically. You guys are welcome to come whenever you need to, either to a meeting or personally, that's fine.
Well, I think what we want to make sure is that we do create a dialogue with whoever it needs to be, whether, probably DJ would have to be a part of anything we do, since he's usually the guy that puts his hand to the plow.
Sure.
And just keep moving forward. We love the building, we want it to be maintained, and we want it to be used.
It's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your hard work. Anybody else for open to the public? I'm not sure, do we have, do you want to give us an update on the executive session regarding some litigation matters?
It's not pressing, so it's entirely up to you, sir.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Gonzalez, Reason. Roll call.
Trustee Horne,
Yes.
Pop,
Yes.
Raisik,
Yes.
Gonzalez, Gray,
Yes.
and Holston.
Yes.
Can you